Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you kindly as ever for stopping by. If you haven't had a chance to watch my interview with the Managing Director of Base Resources and Base Titanium, Tim Carstens, do take a listen. That's at the top of Rich Wrap-Ups. It talks right through the initial investment to the point we're at now, the future, and plenty more. Macro thoughts 30 years ago, the best investors had the biggest funnels of information. Today, the best investors have the best filters of information. Home thoughts, Mount Kenya is beautiful, so tweeted the Mount Kenya Trust, and indeed it is. It's the highest mountain in Kenya and the second highest in Africa after Kilimanjaro. The highest peaks of the mountain are Batian, 17,057 feet, Nelion, 17,021 feet, and Point Lenana, 16,355 feet. Located in central Kenya, in the heart of Kenya, about 16.5 kilometers south of the equator. It's a stratovolcano created approximately 3 million years after the opening of the East African Rift. Sir Halford John Mackinder, whose book I read and I spoke about, was the man who named the 3 highest peaks on Mount Kenya in 1899. And he wrote these words in that same year at the start of his epic journey to conquer Mount Kenya. I went out into the freshness of sunrise and beyond great herds of game grazing peacefully. Within a few hundred yards, saw to the south on the horizon 100 miles away the snowy dome of Kilimanjaro, and 100 miles to the north the twin peaks of Mount Kenya streaked with glaciers. Then he's describing camping at night. The Pleiades twinkled over the center of the Lewis Glacier. Those evenings, this the most wonderful of them all. And my friend Godfrey Mambo at Standard Chartered said, yes, it is, talking about Mount Kenya, very beautiful, and this is one of his photographs. He is a keen mountain climber. To reach new levels in your life, you need to hit an escape velocity, or you'll always be pulled back down to where you came from. Escape velocity is achieved by compounding small daily decisions and getting rid of the people and bad habits that are holding you down. It is the year of the dog, and Magnum Photos tweeted Portofino, Liguria, Italy, 1936. This photograph is of a male lion that crossed from Laikipia with his brothers into the Samburu, and we found him there last year. And then I ended up over the weekend watching this extraordinary documentary, The Last Lions. It's curated by Jeremy Irons and videotaped and directed by Derek and Beverly Joubert. It's really remarkable and worth watching. Black Panther might be the best movie I've seen all year, but this is the second best, 45 seconds if you've got the time. Political Reflections, my weekend piece was titled The Wind of Change. I listened to President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Union speech delivered in Cape Town on Friday night, and I thought to myself, this man has been writing this speech since 1994. From the narrow perspective of the markets, the speech was as loud a buy signal as you're ever going to hear. There is plenty of noise in this new 21st century now in which we all exist, but since Davos, President Ramaphosa has been emitting a very clear signal, and that signal is to buy the ZAR and the South African stock market. South African markets are in a process of pricing out a quite savage Zuma haircut, in brackets discount, and might even move to a Ramaphosa premium. President Ramaphosa spoke at some point in every single South African language, even Afrikaans. And this tilt back towards the language and mood of the Rainbow Nation, which mood was encapsulated by Mandela donning a Springboks jersey during the 1995 Rugby World Cup, had everyone dancing in the aisles at the end of his speech. The president quoted the South African icon Hugh Masekela, "I want to be there when the people start to turn it around." You want to be long, limit long, Ramaphosa. My mind then looped back to another speech which was delivered to the Parliament in Cape Town, but that speech was delivered on February the 3rd, 1960, and by a British Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan. He said, "The wind of change is blowing through this continent. Whether we like it or not, this growth of national consciousness is a political fact. Africa is not a country, is a ubiquitous meme, and at its core is an absolute truth. The continent is non-linear. Kinshasa is not Addis Ababa, is not Lagos, is not Pretoria. However, a wind of change is blowing through this continent." Condoleezza Rice, who served as Secretary of State, said, "What we're seeing here is, in a sense, the birth pangs of a new Middle East. And whatever we do, we have to be certain that we're pushing forward to the new Middle East, not going back to the old Middle East. In brackets, replace Middle East with Africa." Notwithstanding Jacob Zuma's truculence and some moments of high drama, the Rainbow Nation gave birth to President Ramaphosa with relative ease. The former liberation movements in Angola and Zimbabwe are trying to reinvent themselves, and surely further political longevity will be decided by the degree with which Lourenço and Mnangagwa break with the past. There are reasons for optimism. If this were a continuum, then the likes of Ethiopia, DR Congo, and some others are at the extreme end of the continuum. We know these countries are in the delivery room. Ethiopia, a poster child for GDP growth, and where many investors saw a China version 2 type opportunity, has reinstituted a state of emergency, and its prime minister has stepped aside. President Trump has a core support of about 30% of the population. The core support of the Ethiopian regime is 6%. There is no mercurial Meles Zenawi to sit atop it all, and the situation is no longer tenable, and a tipping point could be very close. President Kabila has finally acceded to entering the delivery room, but this is clearly a problematic delivery. I concluded by saying the wind of change is blowing through this continent. Ramaphosa, I watched what he was saying on Friday night, and he said our country has entered a period of change. Together we're going to make history. And then he quoted Hugh Masekela, "I want to be there when the people start to turn it around." Then he said, "Now is the time, now is the time." The speech was very strong, I thought. As I said in my article, I think he'd been preparing for it since 1994. This is the headline in the Libération. The Ethiopians refuse to go back to what was there before. President Kabila is in the 7th year of a 5-year term and is constitutionally barred from standing again. On January 31st, Mr. Kabila's spokesman said his boss would not run for another term and would name a preferred successor by July. I also learned from that David Knowles article in The Economist that the airport on the English Channel island of Guernsey, with a population of 63,000, handles more passengers than Kinshasa's. When change comes to the Congo, it can come fast. The previous president, Laurent Désiré Kabila, lost power when a bodyguard shot him in 2001. The president before that, Mobutu Sese Seko, was overthrown by Rwandan-backed rebels who marched 1,600 kilometers through the rainforest in a mere 6 months wearing gumboots. Mobutu did not pay his troops. You have guns, he told them. You don't need a salary. Faced with a serious enemy, they ran away. A tyrant who had ruled for 32 years was suddenly unemployed. Could it be about to happen again? Asking about Congo. In this photograph, a sea of people converge for Morgan Tsvangirai in Harare. Even in death, the man who continues to inspire. Russia is engaged in a virtual war against the United States through 21st century tools of disinformation and propaganda, says the New York Times. But it is a war being fought on the American side without a commander-in-chief, which is the fair point. And I said some time ago, quoting a US Army journal, one of the defining bifurcations of the future will be the conflict between information masters and information victims. Information warfare will not be couched in the rationale of geopolitics, but will be spawned like any Hollywood drama out of raw emotions, hatred, jealousy, and greed. Emotions rather than strategy will set the terms of information warfare struggles. Vanity Fair asked, did Jared Kushner's data operation help select Facebook targets for the Russians? Saying that perhaps the chaotic Trump campaign unwittingly enlisted Russian-connected proxies who were eager to exploit any opening to damage Hillary Clinton's run. It's also plausible that Trump's long-shot anti-establishment bid was willing to take on assistance without asking too many questions. Are we connecting the dots? I'm finding more dots, said Quigley, who recently traveled to Prague and Budapest to learn about the history of Russian influence campaigns. I believe there was coordination. And if I'm going to leave it at that for now, this is what I was writing about in that piece, we have a deviator. In half a century, we have gone from 75% of the world living in extreme poverty to just 9%. When will they love their kids more than their guns? An Australian priest asks Americans. Netanyahu says Israel could act against Iran's empire. And Javed Zarif responds, what has happened in the past several days is the so-called invincibility of Israel has crumbled. And in this photograph, Jahangir Razmi's Pulitzer Prize winning photograph of execution by the Iranian Islamic regime in 1979. US is saying it has no bloody nose strategy for North Korea. That's good to hear. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar just dipping below 124. Dollar index pushing above 89, 89.09 when I checked last. Japanese yen having got as high as 105.50 early Friday, is now at 106.57. It's up 6% this year. Swiss franc 0.9277. The pound 140.11. The Australian dollar is at 0.7910. India rupee 64.44. South Korean won 1068.30. Brazilian real 323.12. Egyptian pound 17.64, and the rand, at which I'm very bullish, 11.6476. Dollar index as seen by Northman Trader, and he's getting more bullish about it. ECB's favorite future inflation gauge, inflation expectations measured by the five-year swap, trades more or less in lockstep with Brent crude. Euro dollar, I'm fancying it a bit lower here. We've just lost our perch at 124. Commodity markets, gold 1347.29. We had this amazing recovery over the last few weeks. Crude oil, that's been strong this morning, up 48 cents in America, trading at $62.10. The new Venezuelan cryptocurrency, the Petro logo, is seen in this photograph at the Ministry for University Education, Science and Technology. They're saying Turkey and Qatar are willing to take up a significant share of that Petro. Sub-Saharan Africa, Ethiopia said Saturday that a state of emergency will remain in place for 6 months as the authorities move to quell chaos and unruliness. The Council of Ministers declared the country's second emergency decree in 2 years on Friday evening. Ethiopia only fully lifted its last state of emergency in August, following months of curfews, restrictions on movement, and the detention of 29,000 people. The state of emergency might terrorize some people for a short time, but not in the long term, from the FT. The problem for the EPRDF is that people really want regime change. They want the whole system to go. A state of emergency will only delay the inevitable. I tend to agree with that. Africa's largest economies by nominal GDP, according to the IMF, are seen in this tweet from Red Hot Squirrel. Ethiopia is a $79.7 billion economy, Kenya's $78.4 billion, Egypt $408 billion. Wanted for questioning in terms of POCA, PRECCA and PFMA. Fraud Watch South Africa. South African all share is down 0.64% year to date. Time to buy it. Dollar versus rand by more ZARs. This is a 6-month chart. Look, we might pull back. We're heading to 11 and then to 10. Nigerian all shares up 11.49% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is the outlier, up 29.43% year to date. Bharti Airtel plans to take its African business public to bring down its debt, even as India's largest wireless carrier is locked in a tariff war in the world's second largest telecom market that will only partly help it reduce its debt. You can see from these 3 diagrams the dynamics of Bharti Airtel. The Africa business has been improving in performance. It's a Mad World tweeted this cartoon, Kenya's Kings, quite powerful. Kenya Eurobond yields have turned a little bit higher since the market sniffed out that we're going to get more supply. Moody's have downgraded KCB equity and cooperative banks, but having downgraded the sovereign, downgrading KCB equity and co-op was automatic. The sovereign rating is a ceiling. Latest Central Bank of Kenya data shows growth of mobile payments slowed down from 19% in 2016 to 8% in 2017. We had a significantly slower economy. And in an interesting article with some detail about Pesalink and others. Nairobi all shares up 5.29% so far this year. The NSE 20 is up 0.04% this year. And dive into any listed share, just scroll down Rich Wrap-Ups to the very bottom and the link is there. Once again, thank you kindly for stopping by.